This is the observer effect, where your perception becomes the architect of your world. The universe responds not to what happens, but to how you observe it. In these chapters lies the forgotten truth. You've always had the power to shift your reality simply by shifting your attention. The observer effect. Introduction. There is a silent rhythm woven through the fabric of existence, a sacred dance between your awareness and the world it beholds. In this eternal exchange, you are not merely a witness to life's unfolding. You are its composer, its conductor, its star. What the ancients knew, and what science now whispers, is this: reality responds to the gaze that falls upon it. Your consciousness is not passive, it is luminous. Like a golden lantern in a sea of shadow, it casts its light across the infinite field of possibility, and wherever that light lingers, form takes shape. Subtle thought becomes solid matter. Your attention is no idle force. It is the brush that paints reality itself, stroke by deliberate stroke. The universe does not move blindly, it listens. It listens not to your words, but to your perception, to the energy behind your gaze. Observe limitation, and walls appear. Observe abundance, and doors unlock. This is no illusion. It is the law beneath all laws. Consciousness calls reality into being. When you expect struggle, the world bends to fulfill it. When you anticipate ease, the path unfolds. You are not imagining this. You are remembering it. The observer effect is not just a quantum truth. It is a spiritual one. It is the art of aligning your inner state with the world you wish to meet. True power is not control, it is clarity. As your perception shifts, so too does the reality before you. In this sacred partnership between you and the cosmos, you are invited to awaken, not as a spectator, but as a creator. And so, each moment becomes an altar, each thought a prayer, each gaze a seed from which reality blooms. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Part 1. The Awakening of Awareness. Chapter 1. The Weight of Watching. In a small mountain village, an aging woodcarver named Elias sat in his workshop, his weathered hands trembling from the bitter cold. Winter had stretched longer than usual, and his spirit grew as brittle as the frozen branches outside his window. Each morning he found it harder to lift his tools, his movements slowed by the weight of isolation and despair. One evening, as shadows lengthened across his workbench, a knock echoed through his cabin. Opening the door, he found a traveler whose eyes sparkled with an inner warmth that seemed to defy the season. "I see you've stopped carving," the stranger observed, gesturing to the untouched woodpile. "The winter—" Elias began, but the traveler raised his hand gently. "Come, let us walk." Outside, the traveler guided Elias's attention to tiny buds forming beneath the ice-covered branches. "What do you see?" "Death," Elias replied. "Look again," the traveler urged. "Life stirs beneath the surface, preparing for spring's emergence. Your eyes fix upon winter's grip, but nature knows no permanence. Shift your gaze to what's becoming, not what seems to be." As days passed, Elias began watching for signs of spring's approach. His focus on possibility rather than limitation awakened something within him. His hands steadied, his creativity flourished, and his work transformed from mere craft into expressions of emerging life. In another time, in another place, a woman named Grace lost her beloved dog during an afternoon walk. Panic seized her heart as she searched the neighborhood, calling out with increasing desperation. Hours turned to days as she posted flyers, knocked on doors, and scoured every street with frantic energy. On the fourth day, exhausted and distraught, Grace sat on her porch and, for the first time since the search began, allowed herself to be still. In that moment of quiet, she heard a familiar bark from her neighbor's garden shed. There, comfortable and well-fed, was her dog, who had been visiting the neighbor's children each day while she searched elsewhere. The truth reveals itself. Your perception shapes the world you experience. When Elias shifted his gaze from winter's grip to spring's promise, his reality transformed. When Grace released her anxious searching, clarity emerged from stillness. Practice. Tomorrow, choose one challenge in your life. For 10 minutes, observe it without attempting to solve, change, or resist it. Simply witness it, as you might watch clouds pass across the sky. Notice how solutions often emerge not from struggle but from the clarity of peaceful observation. Chapter 2. The Mirror Within. Within the depths of an old Victorian house, Clara unpacked boxes filled with memories from her 30 years of teaching. The house, with its creaking floorboards and whispered echoes, seemed to hold secrets in every corner. One afternoon, while exploring the attic's shadowed recesses, she discovered an ornate mirror beneath a dusty sheet. Each morning, Clara cleaned this mirror with careful attention, watching as its surface grew clearer, day by day. Yet she noticed something peculiar. Her neighbor's attitude seemed increasingly bothersome. The woman next door complained endlessly about her garden. The mailman's perpetual lateness sparked irritation. The children playing too loudly became a source of constant frustration. One night, as moonlight spilled through the attic window, Clara stood before the mirror, cloth in hand. But this time, the reflection showed more than her physical form. In its depths, she saw her own complaints etched in the lines around her mouth, her criticisms reflected in her furrowed brow. The mirror revealed not just her face, but the weight of judgment she carried. As Clara studied this deeper reflection, understanding dawned. Each grievance she held against others masked an unacknowledged truth within herself. The neighbor's complaints echoed her own unspoken dissatisfaction. The mailman's tardiness touched her fear of wasting precious time. The children's noise highlighted her own suppressed desire for freedom of expression. In another part of town lived Thomas, a stern father who frequently criticized his teenage son's impulsive nature. "You never think before you act," he would say, his voice sharp with disapproval. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Thomas took a solitary walk through the park of his childhood. Passing the old swimming hole, memories surfaced unbidden. He remembered jumping from the highest rocks, sneaking out at midnight, living in the thrill of the moment. His own youth had been filled with the very impulsiveness he now condemned in his son. The realization stopped him in his tracks. In judging his son's nature so harshly, he had been rejecting a part of himself he had buried long ago. The universe speaks through mirrors, not just those of glass and silver, but through the reflections we see in others. What stirs strong emotion in you becomes a gateway to self-discovery. The traits that trigger judgment often point to aspects of yourself seeking recognition and integration. Ancient practice of reflection. Take parchment and pen. Write down 3 qualities in others that spark strong dislike or judgment within you. For each, Close your eyes and journey inward. Where might this same trait reside within yourself, perhaps hidden or unacknowledged? Let truth emerge without judgment, for in accepting all parts of yourself, perception clarifies and healing begins. Chapter 3, The Light at the Edge. In the depths of winter, when shadows stretched long across city streets, Arthur sat in his dimly lit studio, surrounded by canvases turned to face the wall. The weight of rejection from his last gallery showing had crystallized into a barrier between his brush and his soul. Each day he walked past his easel, averting his gaze as though it were an accusation. One night, unable to sleep, he wandered the empty streets. Through the mist, he noticed a street performer creating chalk art on the sidewalk. What caught Arthur's attention wasn't the art itself, but a small child who had stopped to watch, her eyes wide with wonder. The artist drew simple shapes that transformed into magical creatures before the child's eyes. Her laughter echoed through the quiet street, pure and unrestrained by judgment. In that moment, something shifted within Arthur's perception. He recognized how his observation of his own work had become tainted by the lens of external validation. The child's joy revealed a truth he had forgotten. Art exists not in the judgment of critics, but in the pure act of creation itself. The universe speaks through such moments of clarity, when the veil of illusion parts to reveal deeper truths. Your perception shapes not just what you see, but what you create. The value of your expression lies not in others' estimation, but in the truth of your own vision. Lucy understood this struggle intimately. A writer who filled notebooks with stories, she had developed a ritual of destruction. Each evening, she would read her day's work, measure it against an impossible standard, and delete every word. Her observation of her craft had become a weapon turned inward. One afternoon, while clearing her computer's trash folder, she found fragments of an old story. Reading it without the pressure of judgment, she experienced her words as though they were a gift from a stranger. The story spoke to her heart in ways she hadn't intended, revealing meanings she hadn't consciously created. From that day forward, Lucy began reading her work as though receiving letters from herself. Her observation shifted from critic to witness, from judge to appreciative reader. In this transformation of perspective, she discovered that worth is not assigned by external measures, but emerges from within. Ancient practice of the mirror. Find a quiet space where you will remain undisturbed. Position yourself before a mirror and allow 5 minutes to pass in silent observation. Do not speak, do not judge, do not try to change what you see. Simply witness your own presence as though watching a stranger. Notice how your perception shifts when you release the need to perform or improve. In this practice lies the seed of true self-observation, free from the distortions of judgment. Chapter 4, Where Nothing Happens. Through the fog of early dawn, Warren's weathered boat drifted on still waters. For 30 days his nets had come up empty, a void that would once have driven him to despair. Yet in this emptiness, a peculiar peace began to settle over him. The absence of fish became not a curse, but a gateway to understanding the rhythm of the sea itself. In the space where struggle once lived, Warren discovered the art of true observation. The ripples of water, the dance of light on waves, the subtle shifts in wind direction, all spoke of patterns he had missed in his decades of focused pursuit. The universe teaches through emptiness as much as through abundance, for in the quiet spaces between thoughts, wisdom flows most freely. You too hold this capacity for deep observation. When you release the need to force outcomes, To fill every moment with action, the universe reveals its hidden currents. Like Warren on his boat, you discover that what appears as absence often conceals the presence of deeper truths. The law of attraction responds not to your actions alone, but to the quality of your attention. In stillness, your energy aligns naturally with the flow of universal forces, drawing to you what resonates with your authentic state of being. David, a technology executive known for his relentless drive, found himself trapped in an endless cycle of meetings and deadlines. For months, a critical solution eluded his team. In desperation, he retreated to a cabin in the mountains, leaving behind his devices and connections to the outside world. For 2 days he sat in silence, watching his thoughts arise and fall away, like leaves on a stream. No brainstorming, no problem-solving, no forced creativity. In this space of pure observation, the answer emerged effortlessly. Not through effort, but through alignment with the infinite intelligence that surrounds us all. Your power lies not in constant doing, but in conscious being. When you step back from the perpetual motion of life and simply observe, you tap into the vast reservoir of wisdom that exists beyond thought. Ancient practice of still observation. Find a quiet space where you will remain undisturbed. Settle into a comfortable position and allow your attention to rest gently on your breath. Do not attempt to control or modify your breathing. Simply watch its natural rhythm. As thoughts arise, acknowledge them without engagement, letting them pass like clouds across the sky of your awareness. Maintain this practice for 15 minutes, allowing stillness to reveal what action has obscured. Chapter 5: The Garden of Awareness. On a small village untouched by time, Loretta stood before her overgrown garden, witnessing years of neglect mirrored in tangled vines and withered stems. Since her husband's passing, she had allowed both the garden and her spirit to fall into disarray. Yet something stirred within her as she gazed upon the wild growth, a whisper of possibility in the chaos. Each morning she ventured into this forgotten space. Her hands worked methodically through stubborn weeds, not fighting against their presence, but acknowledging their part in nature's cycle. As she cleared space around dormant plants, she noticed how her own heart began to unfurl. The garden became her mirror, reflecting the state of her inner world with unfailing accuracy. Through patient observation, Loretta discovered that tending to the garden's needs paralleled the nurturing of her soul. When she approached the work with gentleness, the plants seemed to respond in kind. When frustration clouded her mind, even the simplest tasks became arduous. The universe spoke through every bloom and withered leaf, teaching her that external reality flows from internal states. Malcolm's story echoes this truth from a different angle. Each morning, he immersed himself in headlines, his consciousness swimming in currents of global tension. The more he absorbed these frequencies of fear, the more his world seemed to contract. His thoughts grew heavy with worry, and his days filled with imagined catastrophes. Until one afternoon, when an elderly mentor shared a simple truth: the news you consume becomes the lens through which you view life. Watch not just the events, but how you watch them. This insight transformed Malcolm's relationship with information. He learned to observe headlines as a witness rather than a participant, noting his emotional responses without becoming entangled in them. As his perspective shifted, the world appeared less threatening. The same events that once triggered anxiety now passed through his awareness like clouds across a vast sky. Your reality manifests according to the quality of your observation. When you approach life's circumstances with resistance, you create ripples of discord that echo through your experience. When you observe with acceptance, even challenges reveal their hidden gifts. The ancient practice of morning awareness. As dawn breaks each day before engaging with the world, pause to observe your emotional landscape. Notice what feelings arise without attempting to change them. Are there currents of joy? Undercurrents of worry? Simply witness these states as though watching leaves float down a stream. This act of conscious observation, free from judgment, allows emotional energy to flow naturally rather than becoming stuck in patterns of resistance. Let your awareness rest gently on each feeling, acknowledging its presence before letting it pass. This practice aligns your energy with the natural flow of life, creating space for new possibilities to emerge. Chapter 6: Echoes of the Observer. In the sacred halls of St. Michael's Hospice, Eleanor discovered a truth that had eluded her through decades of medical practice. Each morning, she walked the quiet corridors, her mind initially focused on symptoms, medications, and the familiar rhythms of care. Yet as weeks passed, something extraordinary began to unfold. Through sustained attention, she noticed how the faces of patients transformed before her. Where once she saw illness, she began to glimpse the light of individual souls. Mr. Thompson was no longer terminal lung cancer in room 204, but a master storyteller whose eyes sparkled when sharing tales of his Merchant Navy days. Mrs. Chen ceased being late-stage dementia and emerged as a woman who hummed ancient lullabies in moments of clarity. This shift in observation awakened something within Eleanor herself. Her presence became lighter, more attuned. She found herself moving more slowly, listening more deeply. The universe revealed how the quality of attention shapes not only what appears before us, but transforms the one who sees. The truth of this teaching manifested differently in young Jake's experience. At 15, he had perfected the art of seeing others through the lens of judgment. Ray, the quiet boy who sat alone at lunch, became his favorite target for mockery. Until his art teacher assigned an unusual project: observe one person for a week without forming conclusions. Jake chose Ray, expecting to gather more ammunition for his taunts. But as he watched without the filter of prejudice, something unexpected emerged. He noticed how Ray's hands moved when he drew in his sketchbook, precise, purposeful movements that created worlds on paper. He saw the gentle way Ray helped a freshman pick up scattered books, expecting nothing in return. Day by day, the space between observer and observed dissolved. Jake began to recognize fragments of himself in Ray's solitude. The very act of seeing without judgment transformed his perception, and with it his capacity for understanding. These stories illuminate an eternal truth: when you shift the quality of your attention, you alter the fabric of reality itself. The observer and the observed are not separate. They dance in an eternal embrace of creation. Through conscious observation, you participate in this dance, allowing life to reveal its deeper dimensions. The ancient practice of pure seeing. Find a quiet moment to observe another being without the veil of analysis or judgment. For 5 minutes, simply witness their presence. Notice how they move, breathe, exist. Let go of the need to categorize or understand. In this space of pure observation, you may discover that the boundary between self and other begins to fade, revealing the underlying unity of all things. Chapter 7: The Shape of Belief. In the quiet corner of his workshop, Harold traced each movement of his wrench with deliberate attention. For 20 years, pain had been his constant companion, weaving through his days like an unwelcome shadow. Yet, one morning, as he opened the leather-bound journal given to him by his daughter, something shifted. "Body aches can't lift more than usual. Getting worse with age," he wrote. Then pausing, he added, "I believe this pain means I'm breaking down." The words stared back at him, and for the first time, he saw them not as reality, but as thoughts floating across the vast sky of his consciousness. Day by day, Harold documented not just the physical sensations, but the stories he told himself about them. "I'll never get better" became visible as a thought pattern rather than an immutable truth. As he watched these beliefs with gentle curiosity, their grip began to loosen. Pain remained, but its meaning transformed. Through this practice of observation, the architecture of Harold's suffering revealed itself. Each belief, when held in the light of awareness, began to dissolve like morning mist. His body remained the same, yet his relationship with it shifted from battlefield to sacred ground. This wisdom echoes in the tale of Diane and her daughter Sarah. Each morning Diane would say, "Be careful, the world is dangerous," her love wrapped in layers of fear. Sarah absorbed these words until anxiety became the lens through which she viewed life. One day Diane noticed her own language as if hearing it for the first time. She observed how fear threaded through her words, coloring Sarah's world in shades of threat and danger. With this awareness came choice. She began speaking differently. "Trust yourself. You are capable." As Diane's words shifted, so did the mirror she held up for her daughter. Sarah's shoulders gradually relaxed. Her smile came more easily. The same world that once seemed filled with threats now held possibilities. Nothing in their external reality had changed. Only the lens of observation had been polished clean. These stories unveil a fundamental truth: beliefs are not solid structures, but thought patterns maintained through unconscious agreement. When you step into the role of the observer, these patterns lose their power to define reality. Like clouds passing through the sky, they can be witnessed without attachment. The ancient practice of belief observation. Take a moment now to write down one belief you hold about yourself. Perhaps it speaks of limitation, unworthiness, or fear. On your paper, capture this thought that has shaped your perception of reality. Now, rather than accepting or rejecting it, simply observe it as a pattern of thought. Notice how this belief feels in your body, how it moves through your mind. Watch it as you would watch a leaf floating down a stream, present yet separate from who you truly are. Chapter 8: The Door That Opens From Within. In the realm of perception, what you believe shapes the boundaries of your experience. Yet these boundaries often exist only in thought, not in truth. This wisdom lives in the story of Sylvia, who lost her sight in childhood but gained a deeper vision. Through her fingertips, Sylvia read the texture of the world. Each morning, she traced the grain of her wooden table, feeling the stories held within its rings. The steam from her tea told her of direction and distance. The subtle shifts in air pressure whispered of approaching storms. While others saw her world as dark, she inhabited a universe rich with sensation and meaning. Those around her would often say, "If only you could see." But Sylvia knew that sight was just one way of knowing. Her fingers became eyes, her ears painted pictures, and her skin read the language of space. She observed life through different channels, each sensation building a map more detailed than mere vision could provide. Through her way of being, Sylvia taught a profound truth. Observation transcends the physical senses. What matters is not the mechanism of perception, but the quality of attention brought to each moment. This truth finds its mirror in the tale of Carl, whose mind constantly raced toward tomorrow. His calendar overflowed with appointments, his thoughts tangled in future scenarios. Time felt like a river rushing past, leaving him gasping for breath on its banks. One afternoon, Carl sat in his garden, exhausted from chasing tomorrow. For the first time, he allowed himself to observe the present moment fully, the weight of the air on his skin, the subtle dance of leaves in the breeze, the texture of sunlight through closed eyelids. As his attention settled fully into now, something remarkable occurred. Time seemed to expand around his observation. The present moment, once a fleeting point between past and future, opened into an infinite space. In this space, Carl discovered that reality arranges itself around the observer's attention. Both Sylvia and Carl reveal an essential truth. The way you observe creates the world you inhabit. When you release preconceptions about how perception should work, you open to the vastness of what is. Reality expands or contracts according to the quality of your attention. The ancient practice to choose an ordinary object, perhaps a leaf, a coin, or a simple cup. Observe it as if you have never encountered such a thing before. Touch its surface without naming what you feel. Listen to the sound it makes when tapped, as if hearing for the first time. Let go of what you think you know and allow the object to reveal itself anew through pure observation. Chapter 9, The Unbroken Circle. The power of observation extends beyond physical presence, reaching across the chasms that separate hearts. Two brothers, James and Robert, had not spoken for 20 years after a bitter dispute over their father's estate. Their anger had calcified into silence, each believing the other beyond redemption. One autumn morning, James began watching his brother from afar, not with judgment or accusation, but with the pure attention of someone studying a distant star. He noticed how Robert tended his garden each morning, speaking softly to the plants. He observed how his brother helped neighborhood children fix their bicycles, his hands gentle with the broken chains and bent wheels. Meanwhile, Robert had begun his own practice of observation. From his window, he watched James walk to work, noting how his brother's shoulders carried the weight of responsibility, yet how his step lightened when passing the local animal shelter where he volunteered. Each brother, unknown to the other, was dissolving years of hardened perception through the simple act of watching with fresh eyes. As their observations deepened, something shifted in the field between them. The stories they had told themselves about who the other was began to crack and fall away. In this space of pure witnessing, forgiveness arose, not as an act of will, but as a natural outcome of seeing truly. This truth finds resonance in the story of Elsie, who worked in a small bookstore. Each day she noticed a photograph in the newspaper of a soldier serving overseas, someone she had never met. Instead of passing over the image, she began to pause each morning, holding this stranger in her awareness. She observed him not as a distant figure in uniform, but as a soul with hopes and fears, dreams and sorrows. Over time, her daily practice of observation transformed into a bridge of compassion. Though they would never meet, her attention created a connection that transcended physical space. She discovered that observation, when pure and without agenda, becomes a form of love. These stories reveal the transformative power of conscious observation. When you choose to see beyond your judgments and assumptions, you participate in a healing that ripples outward through the fabric of reality. The observer and the observed exist in a dance of mutual transformation, each changed by the quality of attention flowing between them. The ancient practice: select someone you have judged harshly, find a quiet moment and bring them into your awareness. Release all stories about who they are or what they have done. Simply observe them in your mind as you would a sunset or a flowing river, with openness and curiosity. Notice how the quality of your attention begins to shift, how judgment dissolves into understanding, how the heart naturally opens when perception is freed from the past. Chapter 10. The Flame That Feeds on Light. In the gentle unfolding of dawn, Nina stood at her window watching darkness yield to light. Each morning she witnessed this ancient dance, as golden rays painted the sky in hues no human hand could capture. At first she approached these moments with the same anxious energy that had characterized her art, a desperate need to extract inspiration, to force creativity from unwilling depths. Yet as days turned to weeks, something within her began to shift. The sun, in its unhurried ascent, taught her the wisdom of natural timing. She noticed how light touched each surface differently, how shadows retreated not in haste but in perfect rhythm. Her observation became a meditation, a daily reminder that creation flows from presence rather than pressure. This simple practice transformed her approach to art. Where once she had grasped at ideas, now she allowed them to arise naturally, like the sun itself. Her brushstrokes became more fluid, her colors more authentic. She discovered that creativity, like daybreak, cannot be forced. It must be witnessed into being. In the realm of mind and spirit, a young student named Marcus found similar wisdom in the vast canvas of the sky. Each afternoon, he would lie in the grass, watching clouds drift overhead. His thoughts had always raced and tumbled, creating storms of anxiety and doubt. But as he observed the clouds, he began to understand a fundamental truth. Just as clouds pass through the sky without changing its essential nature, thoughts move through consciousness without altering its pure awareness. Marcus noticed how some clouds were dark and heavy, others light and wispy, yet the sky remained unchanged, eternally spacious. In this observation, he recognized that his own awareness was like the sky, vast and untroubled by the weather of thought and emotion. This understanding brought a natural calm, a space between his essential self and the temporary formations of mind. Through their stories, we glimpse the power of patient observation. When you align your attention with nature's rhythms, you tap into an ancient wisdom that transcends human striving. The universe reveals its secrets not to those who grasp, but to those who watch with quiet reverence. The ancient practice: find a place where you can observe a sunrise, sunset, or the steady flame of a candle. For 10 minutes, let your attention rest fully in this observation. Make no attempt to analyze or capture the experience. Simply allow the light to feed your inner being. In this practice, you align with the natural flow of universal energy, remembering that you too are part of this eternal dance of light and shadow. Part 2: The Alchemy of Attention. Chapter 11. The Silence Between Notes. In the dimly lit corners of a once vibrant jazz club, Louis sat with his trumpet untouched, the brass dulled by neglect. Night after night he struggled to find the spark that had once set his music ablaze. His melodies felt hollow, mechanical, until an unexpected encounter changed everything. An elderly man who introduced himself as a retired orchestra conductor began visiting the club. One evening, as Louis played a lackluster set, the conductor approached him. "You're listening only to what's there," he said, his eyes bright with wisdom. "But music lives in the spaces between the notes. Those silences, they're not empty. They're pregnant with possibility." At first, Louis dismissed these words as mystical nonsense, yet something compelled him to try. During his next practice session, he shifted his attention to the pauses between notes. Gradually, he discovered that these intervals weren't gaps to be filled, but moments of pure potential. His music transformed, becoming not just a series of sounds, but a dance between expression and silence. The universe operates in this same rhythm of presence and pause. Just as a musician must embrace both sound and silence, you too must recognize the power of the space between moments. It is in these intervals that transformation takes root. Rachel discovered this truth amid the chaos of her daily life. Between meetings, deadlines, and endless notifications, she felt suffocated by the constant doing. One afternoon, exhausted, she noticed herself automatically reaching for her phone during lunch. She paused, hands suspended in midair, and for the first time, truly experienced the moment between intention and action. This simple observation opened a door. She began noticing other pauses, the quiet before her first sip of morning coffee, the stillness between conversations, the space between breaths. These weren't empty moments to be filled, but portals to presence. As days passed, Rachel found herself naturally creating more of these pauses. Before responding to emails, she would take a conscious breath. Between tasks, she would allow a moment of complete stillness. These small spaces became sanctuaries, transforming her rushed existence into a more measured dance with time. In both Louis and Rachel's journeys, we witness the power of observing what appears to be nothing. The spaces between notes, words, and actions are not voids to be filled, but fertile ground where new awareness can bloom. The ancient practice. In your next conversation, resist the urge to immediately fill every silence. Instead, observe the spaces between words, not as awkward gaps, but as moments rich with unspoken meaning. Notice how these pauses affect the rhythm of communication, how they allow understanding to deepen. In these intervals, you may discover that true connection often happens not in the words themselves, but in the quiet spaces they create. Chapter 12. The Echo of Intent. In the gentle glow of evening light, Marjorie sat at her oak desk, pen poised over crisp paper. Her hand trembled slightly as she began to write words she never intended to send. These letters, addressed to those who had shaped her life through joy and pain alike, became vessels for truths long buried in her heart. Through this practice, you too will discover that the act of writing without the weight of audience or consequence opens doorways within. As Marjorie's pen flowed across page after page, she noticed how her perception of past hurts began to shift. The simple act of observing her thoughts through written word transformed her relationship with memory itself. The universe responds not just to what you think, but to how you observe your thoughts. When you write with pure intention, allowing truth to flow unfiltered, you create a sacred space where healing naturally emerges. Your words become more than mere expressions. They become instruments of energetic transformation. Daniel discovered this principle through spoken word. Each morning, he would voice his intentions, but initially felt no shift in his reality. Then he learned to observe the vibration of each word as it left his lips. He began to feel how "I am worthy" resonated differently when spoken with awareness versus routine repetition. "I noticed how my body responded to each syllable," he shared. "When I truly listened to my own voice, the words carried a weight they never had before." This subtle shift in observation transformed his daily practice from mechanical repetition into active creation. The power lies not in the words themselves, but in your relationship with them. As you observe your expression, whether written or spoken, without judgment or attachment, you align with the creative force that shapes reality. Each letter Marjorie wrote became a mirror, reflecting not just her thoughts, but the very essence of her being. Through conscious writing, you bypass the mind's usual filters and access deeper wells of wisdom. The simple act of putting pen to paper, while maintaining awareness of the process itself, creates a bridge between your current reality and the unlimited potential that exists in the space of pure observation. Ancient practice. Write a letter with no audience. Write only to observe the truth inside you. Chapter 13, The Mirror of the Marketplace. In the bustling financial district, Warren stood at his office window, watching traders rush through the morning rain. For 20 years, he had observed the ebb and flow of markets, noticing how fear moved like a contagion through trading floors. Yet something shifted in his perception when he began to watch without attachment. The market, he realized, was neither friend nor foe, it simply was. Those who approached it with fear saw only scarcity, their vision clouded by the need to protect what they had. But those who watched with calm awareness recognized the natural cycles of expansion and contraction, much like the breath of the universe itself. When you step back from the immediate push and pull of transaction, you begin to see that abundance flows, not from grasping, but from alignment with these universal rhythms. The observer who maintains inner stillness gains clarity that the reactive mind cannot access. Grace learned this truth in an unexpected way. Fresh from business school, she entered her first major negotiation, armed with strategies and counter-strategies. Her mind raced with scenarios of conflict and competition. Yet, as she sat across the table from her potential partners, something prompted her to pause. Instead of launching into her prepared defense, she chose to observe. She noticed the subtle interplay of energies in the room, the way tension held in shoulders slowly released, how unspoken concerns revealed themselves in small gestures. By stepping out of the battle mindset, she entered a space of pure awareness. "The moment I stopped trying to control the outcome," she later shared, "everything shifted. I could see opportunities that fear had hidden from view. The negotiation transformed from confrontation into collaboration, and the deal closed with an ease that surprised everyone involved." This illustrates a fundamental truth. The observer creates the observed. When you approach situations of value and exchange with awareness rather than anxiety, you align with the natural flow of abundance. Your perception shapes not just your experience, but the very field of possibility around you. The universe responds not to your strategies, but to your state of being. When you observe financial matters from a place of centered awareness, you tap into the infinite stream of prosperity that exists beyond the illusion of scarcity. Ancient practice. In your next interaction involving money or value, observe the situation as if you are not trying to gain or lose. Before we get into the next chapter, you can download a free ebook version of this audiobook using the link in the pinned comment below this video. Chapter 14. The Eyes That See Themselves. Through the hallways of Maple Grove Elementary, Evelyn walked with the quiet grace of one who had spent decades observing human nature. After 30 years as a therapist, she thought she understood how minds worked. Yet these children showed her something extraordinary about the power of observation. In her volunteer work, she watched as two students gazed at the same painting. One saw a storm because his parents had taught him that dark colors meant danger. The other saw a dance of shadows because her mother was a photographer who celebrated light in all its forms. Neither child was wrong. They simply reflected the lens through which they had been taught to observe their world. This revelation opened a gateway to understanding how deeply parental observation shapes reality. When a mother labels her child as shy, that observation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When a father sees his daughter as strong-willed, that perception creates a framework for her behavior. The power lies not in the truth of these observations, but in their impact on the growing mind. In the quiet suburbs of a different town, Arthur made an unusual choice. From the moment his son was born, he refused to label the child's behavior or personality. He simply observed, allowing his son's nature to unfold without the weight of expectation or definition. As his son grew, something remarkable emerged. Without the constraints of being the smart one, or the difficult child, or the athlete, the boy moved through life with unusual freedom. When other parents asked about his son's personality, Arthur would smile and say, "He is as he is in this moment." Other children seemed to live within the boundaries of their assigned characteristics, but Arthur's son flowed between states of being, quiet in one moment, exuberant in the next, without feeling any contradiction. He excelled in math one semester and art the next, unconcerned with maintaining any particular identity. This freedom from observation-based limitations allowed him to experience life more fully, unbound by the expectations that often shape young minds. He became living proof that the observer's eye can either confine or liberate. Your observation carries this same power. Every time you look at a loved one, you participate in shaping their reality. The labels you apply, the patterns you expect to see, these create ripples in the field of possibility around them. Ancient practice and choose one child or loved one in your life. For a full day, observe them with no assumptions, just presence. Let go of their history, their usual patterns, and your expectations. Watch them as if meeting them for the first time, with wonder rather than knowledge. Notice how this shift in your observation opens new possibilities in your relationship. Chapter 15. The Dance of Duality. High in the mountains where stars painted stories across the night sky, Samuel spent his nights peering through telescopes at celestial bodies. After 40 years of studying the cosmos, retirement brought an unexpected darkness, not in the sky, but in his heart. The mysteries he had devoted his life to understanding now seemed to mock him with their vastness. One sleepless night, as moonlight streamed through his window, he noticed how the silvery light transformed his room. The moon, he remembered, generated no light of its own. It merely reflected the sun's radiance. In that moment, a profound truth emerged. Observation need not generate understanding to be valuable. The moon's beauty lay not in its ability to produce light, but in its perfect reflection of another's brilliance. This revelation transformed Samuel's relationship with uncertainty. Just as the moon and sun created harmony through their distinct roles, perhaps the observer and the observed were not in conflict, but in dance. His years of scientific training had taught him to seek absolute truth, yet nature itself demonstrated the power of reflection and relationship. In the bustling city below, Thomas walked through life with rigid certainty. He saw himself as virtuous and others as misguided. Each interaction reinforced his sense of moral superiority until a chance encounter shifted his perspective. During a heated debate, he caught his own reflection in a window and saw for the first time how his righteousness created separation rather than understanding. Slowly, Thomas began to observe others not as opponents to be corrected, but as mirrors reflecting different aspects of human experience. The colleague he had judged as lazy showed him his own fear of rest. The neighbor he criticized as too emotional revealed his own suppressed feelings. As his observation softened, so did the boundaries between self and other. Quantum physics teaches us that the observer affects the observed, yet ancient wisdom suggests that the observed equally affects the observer. When you truly see another person, you open yourself to transformation. Their perspective, no matter how different from your own, offers a reflection of possibility you might not otherwise encounter. Ancient practice is select someone whose views strongly oppose your own. Spend time observing their perspective without forming counterarguments. Notice how your body feels when you release the need to be right. Let their truth exist alongside yours, like the moon and sun sharing the same sky. Simply witness their viewpoint as you would watch a cloud pass overhead, without judgment or resistance. Chapter 16. The Shape of Seeing. In the heart of an ancient village, Harold sat before his workbench, his weathered hands hovering over a mound of untouched clay. For 30 years he had bent material to his will, forcing shape from formlessness. Yet on this morning something shifted in his approach. Rather than immediately pressing his fingers into the earth, he simply watched it. The clay held its own wisdom, he realized. Its natural state spoke of valleys and mountains, of rivers carved through time. As sunlight played across its surface, Harold saw that creation might not require his constant intervention. Perhaps his role was not to dominate the material, but to witness its inherent nature and allow it to guide his hands. In the silence of observation, the clay revealed possibilities he had never imagined. Each curve and hollow suggested forms beyond his usual designs. His fingers, when they finally moved, followed the clay's lead rather than imposing his will. What emerged was unlike anything he had created before, organic, alive with its own truth. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, shapes reality much like clay responds to gentle awareness. When you force your will upon life, it resists. But when you observe with patience and acceptance, reality molds itself in harmony with your consciousness. In a small apartment across town, Lucy discovered this same truth through different means. One morning, while washing dishes, she noticed her hands moving through water. Instead of rushing through the task, she paused to watch the dance of fingers and soap bubbles. Each movement, she realized, held its own grace. This simple observation transformed her daily routines into meditation. Chopping vegetables became a sacred act. Folding laundry turned into a study of form and flow. Her hands, she discovered, knew an ancient language of movement she had never noticed in her haste to complete tasks. Through conscious observation, Lucy found that time itself seemed to shift. Moments expanded, filled with presence rather than purpose. Her hands became teachers, showing her how to move through life with awareness rather than automation. In both Harold's studio and Lucy's kitchen, the same truth emerged. Observation without agenda reveals the sacred, in the ordinary. When you release the need to control, to shape, to direct, life flows through you with natural grace. Ancient practice. Pause now in your daily activities. Watch your hands as they move through space. Notice how they know exactly where to go, how to turn a key or lift a cup. Make no effort to change their movement. Simply observe their intelligence. Let their motion remind you that wisdom lives not just in thought, but in the body's natural knowing. Chapter 17, The Field Between. In the gentle hours of dawn, two souls unknowingly share a sacred moment. Henry walks the eastern path through wild meadows, while Clara traces the western edge. Between them stretches a field of untamed beauty, nature's neutral ground in their long-standing silence, and the wildflowers dance in morning light, their faces turned toward the sun. On this day, something shifts in the air. Henry pauses, his gaze drawn to a patch of purple blooms swaying in the breeze. At the same moment, Clara stops to witness the same dance of petals. Without knowing the other's presence, they share a smile, two hearts opening to the same beauty. In this field of possibility, where observation meets grace, the seeds of connection begin to stir. The universe works in whispers, in shared moments of appreciation that transcend the walls we build. When two souls observe the same beauty, even from different vantage points, an invisible bridge forms between them. Your power to transform relationships lies not in words spoken or actions taken, but in the quality of your observation. When you witness life with an open heart, you create a field of harmony that touches all who enter it. In another time and place, a mother rises before sunrise. She stands at her window, sending invisible threads of love into the morning air. She doesn't know that across the city, her blessing ripples through space, touching the heart of its recipient. Day after day, she maintains this ritual of silent observation. Gradually, the recipient begins to sense something different in their mornings. A warmth, a peace they cannot explain, settles around their shoulders like a soft shawl. They find themselves pausing at their own window, drawn to the same hour without knowing why. Through the mother's consistent observation, a channel of peace opens between 2 points in space. This reveals a profound truth about the nature of observation. It requires no confirmation, no acknowledgement, no response. Like light traveling through space, your conscious awareness touches what it focuses upon, regardless of distance or recognition. The power of observation transcends physical proximity. When you hold someone in your conscious awareness with love, you create a bridge of light between your soul and theirs. This bridge exists outside of time and space, carrying healing on its invisible arc. Ancient practice. Find a quiet moment in your day. Close your eyes and bring someone you care about into your mind's eye. Simply observe their being, their essence, without trying to change or fix anything. Let your awareness rest upon them like sunlight on water. This practice, passed down through generations of wisdom keepers, activates the healing power of conscious observation. Chapter 18, The Lens of Time. In the dusty halls of her study, Grace runs her fingers along leather-bound volumes that have been her companions for decades. After 40 years of teaching history at the university, she approaches these familiar texts with new eyes. As she opens a chronicle of ancient Rome, something shifts in her perception. The words on the page remain unchanged, yet they reveal a different truth. Each account, she notices, carries the distinct mark of its observer. The victorious general's dispatches paint glory, while the defeated soldier's letters speak of chaos. Neither lies, yet neither tells the whole truth. Night after night, Grace immerses herself in these accounts, no longer seeking facts, but observing the observers themselves. She sees how scribes shaped reality through their chosen words, how each interpretation became its own truth. The Persian Empire appears tyrannical through Greek eyes, yet enlightened through Eastern scrolls. The same events, filtered through different consciousness, create entirely different worlds. This revelation transforms Grace's understanding of not just history, but reality itself. If the past changes shape depending on who observes it, then perhaps the present moment holds the same fluid nature. Each observer creates their own version of now, just as each historian created their own version of then. In a small apartment across town, Edward discovers a box of photographs from his college years. He remembers those days as dark and lonely, yet the images tell a different story. There he stands, surrounded by smiling faces at parties he'd forgotten, laughing in moments his memory had erased. One photo particularly strikes him, a sunset gathering where he sits slightly apart from the group. For years he'd carried the story that no one wanted him there. Yet now, observing with fresh eyes, he sees something different. The space around him looks intentional, peaceful. The angle of his body suggests not isolation, but comfortable solitude. Edward realizes his memory had been colored by the lens of his younger self's insecurities. The past wasn't fixed, it shifted with each observation, each remembering. His pain hadn't distorted the events, it had distorted his observation of them. Through these stories, we glimpse a fundamental truth. Reality shapes itself around the observer. Your memories, your present moment, your understanding of truth, all arise from the quality of your observation. As you witness without judgment, new dimensions of reality reveal themselves. Ancient practice: choose one significant memory from your past, sit quietly, and allow it to surface in your mind. Observe it as if watching a scene unfold on a screen, without trying to change it, without labeling it good or bad. Notice the details you focused on then and what draws your attention now. Let the memory exist without needing to reshape it. In this pure observation lies the power to transform not the past, but your relationship with it. Chapter 19. The Breath Before. In the hushed silence of the concert hall, Louis sits motionless before the grand piano. The weight of expectation presses against his chest as hundreds of eyes rest upon him. His fingers, usually so fluid and precise, feel leaden. The familiar warmth of music has turned cold, replaced by an icy fear that threatens to consume him. As the tension mounts, Louis makes a decision that defies convention. He chooses not to play. Instead, he remains still, observing the space between himself and the instrument. He notices the subtle gleam of light on polished ebony, the perfect symmetry of black and white keys. His breath slows, matching the quiet rhythm of the hall. In this sacred pause, something extraordinary unfolds. The fear that had gripped him dissolves into the stillness. The space between intention and action becomes not an emptiness to be filled, but a presence to be honored. When his fingers finally touch the keys, the music flows not from effort, but from the silence itself. The universe speaks its clearest truth in moments of pure observation. Just as the space between musical notes gives rhythm its power, the pause before action shapes the quality of what follows. This principle reveals itself in countless ways, through countless lives. Consider Diane walking toward her interview at a prestigious firm. Years of preparation have led to this moment, yet anxiety threatens to undermine her confidence. At the threshold of the office door, she stops. Rather than rushing in with rehearsed answers, she takes one conscious breath. In that brief pause, she observes the moment without resistance. This single breath transforms everything. As she enters the room, her presence carries the calm certainty of one who has made peace with the present moment. The interviewers sense this subtle shift, though they cannot name it. The entire conversation flows with an ease that would have been impossible moments before. These moments of conscious pause hold a power often overlooked in your rushing world. When you step back from immediate action and simply observe, you align with the natural rhythm of the universe. This alignment brings forth actions that arise not from fear or force, but from harmony with what is. Ancient practice. Before any significant action today, whether entering a meeting, beginning a conversation, or starting a task, pause. Take one conscious breath. Observe the space around you, the sensations within you. Let this moment of stillness inform what follows. Notice how this practice transforms not just your actions, but the very field of possibilities before you. Chapter 20. The Observer's Shadow. Malcolm stood before his class, his keen eyes scanning the faces of his students as he delivered his lecture on human behavior. For 20 years he had taught psychology, priding himself on his ability to read people, to understand their motivations, their fears, their desires. Yet on this day, a quiet voice from the back of the room would shake the foundation of his certainty. "Professor," the student asked, "how often do you turn that analytical gaze inward?" The question hung in the air like morning mist, and for the first time in decades, Malcolm felt the ground beneath his expertise shift. He had spent a lifetime observing others, cataloging their patterns, their shadows. Yet his own remained unexplored. In the weeks that followed, Malcolm began a different kind of observation. Each morning, before analyzing his students or colleagues, he would sit in silence, watching his own thoughts arise. What he discovered startled him. Beneath his professional insights lay judgments, fears, and biases he had never acknowledged. His clarity, he realized, had been filtered through these unseen layers. The universe works through such moments of recognition. When the observer becomes the observed, a deeper truth emerges. What you see in others is invariably colored by what remains unseen within yourself. This truth revealed itself again through Loretta, who managed a small bookstore in a quiet town. She had always seen herself as discerning, able to spot the flaws in others with unerring accuracy. Her days were filled with silent critiques of customers who mishandled books, of employees who failed to meet her standards, of neighbors who never quite measured up. One evening, as she sorted through old journals, she found entries from years past. Reading her own words, she recognized a pattern. Her harsh judgments of others mirrored deep resentments she carried within. The customer's carelessness reflected her own unfulfilled dreams of writing. The employee's mistakes echoed her fear of imperfection. The neighbor's perceived failings masked her own sense of isolation. As Loretta began to observe these hidden parts of herself, something shifted. Her gaze softened, not just toward others, but toward the wounded places within that had gone unseen for so long. The very act of witnessing these shadows without judgment began to transform them. The shadow self is not an enemy to be vanquished, but a teacher waiting to be heard. When you turn your attention inward, with gentleness and curiosity, you begin to understand that true observation requires complete honesty, first with yourself, then with the world. Ancient practice. Find a quiet moment and sit before a mirror. Look into your own eyes, not as critic or judge, but as student. What aspects of yourself have you refused to see? What judgments of others might reflect your own unacknowledged truths? Write down what emerges without censoring or analyzing. Let this practice of self-observation become a daily ritual of discovery. Part 3, Beyond Observation. Chapter 21, The Pulse of Presence. In the heart of an ancient orchard where time flows like honey through twisted branches, Eleanor makes her yearly pilgrimage. Each spring she walks these rows not to gather fruit, but to witness the silent dance of growth. The trees, planted decades ago, have become her teachers in the art of presence. When her husband passed, Eleanor discovered that grief, like seasons, moves in cycles. The orchard became her sanctuary, not to escape loss, but to understand its place in the tapestry of existence. She learned that observation itself is a form of communion with life's eternal flow. As you walk this path of awareness, remember that presence transcends the boundaries of time. When you truly observe, without seeking to alter or achieve, you step into the stream of life itself. The trees Eleanor watches do not hurry their growth, nor do they resist winter's embrace. They simply are, and in their being, they teach the art of witnessing. Through patient observation, Eleanor discovered that absence creates its own form of presence. The space left by loss became fertile ground for new understanding. She found that by watching life continue its dance in the unfurling of leaves and the ripening of fruit, she participated in something greater than her individual story. This truth echoed in Jacob's journey as well. After losing his wife, he found himself watching his daughter Sarah grow with an intensity he had never known before. Each morning, as she prepared for school, he observed the subtle changes in her face, the way her expressions shifted between childhood and adolescence. At first, Jacob tried to freeze time through observation, as if by watching closely enough he could prevent more loss. But gradually he learned that true observation requires release. He began to see that his daughter's growth was not separate from his grief. Both were part of the same river of experience. One morning, as Sarah laughed with friends before school, Jacob realized that the observer becomes part of life's unfolding. His presence, his witnessing, added something essential to his daughter's journey. Not through doing or fixing, but through the simple act of being fully present. The universe speaks through such moments of pure observation. When you release the need to control or direct, you open yourself to life's natural wisdom. Your presence becomes a form of love, spacious, accepting, complete. Ancient practice. Choose someone you love deeply. Set aside a time to simply observe them, perhaps as they read, work, or move through their day. Make no attempt to change or improve what you see. Let your gaze be gentle, your heart open. Notice how this quality of attention creates a sacred space where love flows naturally, without effort or agenda. Chapter 22, The Unseen Witness. In the quiet sanctuary of his church, Father James sits alone in the golden light of dawn. For 60 years he has observed what he believed to be God's presence in every confession, every prayer, every moment of sacred silence. Yet now, as autumn leaves scatter across the chapel steps, a question rises within him like incense. when he closes his eyes in prayer, whose presence fills the space? Is it truly the divine he witnesses, or himself witnessing through divine eyes? The distinction begins to blur, like candlelight reflecting upon still water. Each morning, Father James walks the empty aisles, touching the worn wooden pews. His fingers trace decades of prayers absorbed into the grain. He realizes that in every moment of watching for God's presence, he himself has been watched. Observer and observed dance as one, like flame and air. This truth reveals itself not in thunder or revelation, but in the gentle dissolution of separation. The eyes through which he watches are themselves watched by the infinite. In this recognition, Father James finds not the loss of faith, but its deepening into mystery. In another place, a woman named Ruth sits in her garden at dawn. For months she has followed her breath like a faithful companion. In and out, rise and fall. Yet one morning, something shifts. The line between Ruth who watches and breath that flows begins to fade. She notices that the breath breathes itself, that awareness watches itself. There is no separate Ruth who must maintain vigilance. In this moment, the observer and the observed merge into pure experience. The breath watches the breath, awareness knows itself. Ruth discovers that she has been both the silence and its witness, the space in which all movement occurs. Like a wave realizing it is ocean, she finds herself as both the watching and the watched. These stories point to an ancient truth: the observer is not separate from the observed. In watching, you become what you watch. In observing life, you are life observing itself through your eyes. Sacred practice and sit in stillness and ask, who is watching? Turn attention back upon itself. Watch the watcher. Notice how the observer, when observed, dissolves into pure awareness. Rest in this knowing. Chapter 23, The Echo Beyond Ego. In the gentle hours of morning, Marjorie sits at her oak desk, pen hovering over blank chapters. She had taught literature for 40 years, guiding students through the stories of others. Now, as she begins to write her own tale, something unexpected emerges. Initially, she writes of achievements, challenges overcome, moments of triumph. Yet as words flow, she notices how each memory shifts when viewed from different angles. The day she won the teaching award transforms from personal victory to a celebration of her students' growth. Her divorce story evolves from tragedy to a lesson in witnessing life's natural cycles. As chapters fill, Marjorie discovers that stepping back from the center of her narrative reveals a tapestry far richer than she imagined. Her life story becomes not a singular journey, but a dance of interconnected moments, each one shaped by how she chose to observe it. In another part of the city, Arthur sits in his therapy office, shifting his approach to healing. For years, he analyzed, interpreted, and guided his clients toward insight. But one day, he simply begins to witness. A young woman speaks of loss, and instead of offering solutions, Arthur becomes pure presence. In this space of unconditional observation, she finds her own answers emerging like flowers breaking through soil. A businessman struggling with anger discovers peace not through Arthur's wisdom, but through being truly seen without judgment. Session after session, Arthur notices how his role as witness creates a field where transformation occurs naturally. He becomes not the healer, but the space where healing happens. His clients begin to shift, not because of his interventions, but because of his quality of attention. These experiences reveal a profound truth. When you step out of the way, observation becomes a gateway to wisdom. The ego, with its need to be the protagonist, often distorts what we see. Yet when we surrender the role of main character, reality reveals itself with startling clarity. The universe does not require your narration to unfold its story. It asks only for your witnessing presence, your willingness to observe, without inserting yourself at the center of every scene. Sacred practice and choose a significant experience from your life. Write about it as if you were not the main character. Observe how the story changes when you become the witness rather than the protagonist. Notice how this shift in perspective reveals truths that were hidden when you stood at the center. Chapter 24. The Observer's Choice. You have discovered a truth that few dare to acknowledge. Your perception shapes the very fabric of reality. This wisdom unfolds through the story of Carl, a young man who spent countless hours immersed in dark theories about hidden forces controlling the world. Each morning, he scoured websites and forums, collecting evidence that confirmed his deepest fears. His mind became a lens that filtered every experience through suspicion and dread. Yet one autumn evening, while watching shadows dance across his wall, Carl noticed something peculiar. The more intensely he focused on finding manipulation and control in the world, the more his daily life seemed to offer proof of these patterns. This observation sparked a revelation. Perhaps his attention itself was creating the reality he feared. With this understanding, Carl began a different kind of investigation. Instead of searching for conspiracy, he started observing his own process of perception. When fear arose, he watched it without feeding it. When paranoid thoughts emerged, he noticed them as thoughts rather than truths. Gradually, his world began to shift. People who once seemed threatening now appeared as fellow travelers on life's journey. Events that would have triggered anxiety became opportunities for growth. This transformation reveals the essence of free will, not as the power to control external events, but as the freedom to choose how we observe them. Your greatest power lies not in changing what is, but in selecting the lens through which you perceive it. This truth echoes in Lucy's journey through addiction recovery. For years, she saw her cravings as overwhelming forces that defined her identity. Each urge felt like an unbreakable command, a truth about who she was and would always be. Then, during a moment of clarity, Lucy learned to watch her cravings with detachment. She began observing these impulses as temporary weather patterns in her consciousness, storm clouds that would inevitably pass. This shift in perception changed everything. The cravings didn't vanish, but their power diminished under her steady, accepting gaze. As she cultivated this practice, Lucy discovered that she was not her thoughts or urges. She was the awareness watching them arise and fade. This realization freed her from the grip of compulsion, allowing her to choose her response rather than react automatically. Sacred practice. In one moment of challenge today, choose a lens of curiosity instead of fear. Observe what happens. Notice how this shift in perception alters not just your internal state, but the very nature of your experience. Let your awareness rest in the space of possibility rather than contraction. Chapter 25, The Language of Light. The boundaries between observer and observed dissolve in ways that science alone cannot explain. This truth emerged for Robert, a retired physicist who had dedicated his life to measuring, calculating, and reducing reality to mathematical equations. Each morning he would sit in his study, surrounded by books filled with formulas that once seemed to hold all of life's answers. Yet when Robert began his daily meditation practice, something shifted. At first he approached it as he had approached his experiments, with precision and analysis. But one morning, as sunlight streamed through his window, he noticed something extraordinary. The beam of light before his closed eyes began to shift and change with each breath. Blues melted into purples, then transformed into golden hues he had never seen in his laboratory. In that moment, Robert understood that consciousness itself was not merely observing. It was participating in the dance of creation. The light responded to his attention, as if aware of being watched. This simple yet profound experience challenged everything he had believed about the nature of reality. The vibration of awareness itself became clear to him, not as a metaphor, but as a tangible force that could shape the quantum field of possibility. His years of studying particle physics suddenly aligned with this ancient wisdom. The observer and the observed are one unified field of consciousness. This same principle revealed itself through Maya's artistic journey. Her paintings had always been technically skilled, but something was missing until she discovered the power of loving attention. Each evening she would sit before her finished works, not to critique or analyze, but to observe them with pure appreciation. As she poured this quality of attention into her art, something mysterious began to occur. Visitors to her studio would stop, transfixed, before certain pieces. "There's something about this one," they would say, drawn to painting she had blessed with her conscious, loving awareness. Maya realized that her attention was not passive. It was a force that could imbue objects with vibration. The paintings she observed with love seemed to radiate that same quality back to others, creating a field of resonance that transcended the visual plane. Sacred practice. Observe something you create, art, music, writing, with love. Let your attention rest upon it not as a critic or creator, but as a witness to its inherent beauty. Notice how this quality of observation transforms both the observed and the observer. Chapter 26, The Witness in the Storm. In the darkest moments when chaos surrounds you, the way you observe determines whether you sink or sail. Elias understood this truth one stormy night at sea, when towering waves threatened to overwhelm his small vessel. As lightning split the sky and thunder shook the air, he noticed an unusual calm settling over him. Instead of fighting against the storm's fury, he began to watch it with the eyes of acceptance. Each massive wave became not a threat, but a dance partner in nature's grand performance. The more he observed without resistance, the more he felt aligned with the storm's rhythm. In that space between fear and surrender, Elias discovered something remarkable. His body knew exactly how to move with the sea's motion. His hands found the right ropes at the right moments. Time seemed to expand and contract like the waves themselves. When dawn finally broke, he realized that survival had transformed into something far more sacred, a communion with the very forces that had threatened to destroy him. Through pure observation, he had become one with the storm's wild heart. This truth echoes through the story of Diane, whose young daughter fell ill with a mysterious fever. As other parents might have crumbled under fear and anxiety, Diane chose a different path. She sat beside her daughter's bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest with steady, loving attention. In this space of pure observation, Diane created a field of peace around them both. She noticed everything, the subtle changes in her daughter's breathing, the way sunlight moved across the room, the rhythm of the medical machines. Yet she remained untouched by the panic that often accompanies such situations. Her presence became a sanctuary, a still point in the storm of illness. The medical staff noticed it too, how her calm observation seemed to create a space where healing could unfold naturally, without forcing, without grasping. She simply held space and watched. As her daughter recovered, Diane understood that her role as observer had been crucial, not because she had controlled anything, but precisely because she hadn't tried to control what was uncontrollable. The power of observation lies not in changing what we see, but in allowing what we see to exist without resistance. In that allowing, we access a deeper current of wisdom that knows exactly what is needed. Sacred practice. In your next challenge, observe without needing to control. See what happens when you are still. Chapter 27. The Alchemy of Non-Attachment. In the depths of longing, there exists a sacred space between wanting and being. Ruth discovered this truth after years of seeking completion through relationships. Each failed connection left her feeling more hollow, until she learned to watch her desires with gentle awareness. Through daily meditation, she began to notice how her need for partnership rose and fell like waves on a shore. Some days, the longing crashed against her heart with fierce intensity. Other days, it receded into quiet ripples. As she observed without clinging, she realized these feelings weren't commands to be obeyed, but movements of energy passing through her field of awareness. The more she watched her desires without trying to fulfill them, the more she recognized their transient nature. What had seemed like an unbearable emptiness transformed into a spacious presence. She found herself enjoying solitude, discovering parts of herself that had been overshadowed by the constant search for completion. In this same spirit of witnessing, Daniel's journey from ambition's grip began in an unexpected moment. After missing a crucial promotion, he sat in his office late one night, watching the city lights below. Instead of drowning in disappointment, he chose to observe his burning desire for success as if watching distant stars. Each time thoughts of career advancement arose, he acknowledged them without attachment. "Ah, there's that feeling again," he would note, letting it float by like a cloud in the vast sky of awareness. This simple practice began to loosen ambition's hold on his happiness. Over time, Daniel noticed how his desires would intensify and fade, much like weather patterns moving through consciousness. The need to achieve remained, but it no longer controlled him. His work improved naturally, flowing from a place of presence rather than desperate striving. What both Ruth and Daniel discovered was the liberating power of pure observation. When we watch our desires without trying to satisfy or suppress them, they lose their compelling force. We begin to taste the freedom that comes from being the witness rather than the wanting. Practice observe a desire today without clinging to it. Just see it move. Chapter 28, The Mirror Beyond Time. In the quiet depths of memory lies a power greater than the ability to change the past, the power to transform how we see it. Robert, an elderly historian who had spent decades documenting the lives of others, found himself drawn to examine his own story with fresh eyes. Each morning he would sit in his study, surrounded by journals spanning 50 years. Instead of seeking to revise or justify past choices, he simply observed them as if reading about someone else's journey. The arguments with his brother, the career paths not taken, the moments of doubt, all began to shift under this gentle gaze. Through this practice of neutral observation, Robert discovered that what he had labeled as failures were actually turning points that shaped his understanding. The year he spent pursuing a dead-end research project taught him the value of persistence. His failed marriage opened his heart to deeper compassion. As you observe your own history, remember that the past is not a story carved in stone, but a living narrative that transforms with each new perspective. The events themselves remain unchanged, but their meaning evolves through the lens of present awareness. Clara discovered this truth while cleaning out her mother's attic. She found a photograph of herself at 23, standing before her first apartment with uncertain eyes. For years, she had looked at that image and seen only naivety, the mistakes waiting to unfold, the heartbreaks yet to come. But on this day, something shifted. As she held the photograph, she observed the young woman with different eyes. She saw not the flaws or the future stumbles, but the raw courage it took to stand alone in a new city. The hope in those eyes became not foolishness, but a pure expression of life's unfolding. Clara kept the photograph on her desk, not as a reminder of who she had been, but as a testament to the power of compassionate observation. Each glance became a moment of reconciliation with her younger self, an acknowledgement that every version of us deserves understanding. The wisdom lies not in rewriting your story, but in learning to observe it with grace. When you look back, without the need to judge or correct, the past transforms from a source of regret into a river of understanding. Each memory becomes not a burden to carry, but a lesson that carried you. Practice. Find a photograph or memory from your past that has always stirred feelings of regret or self-criticism. Sit quietly with this image or recollection, breathing deeply and allowing yourself to witness that moment as though observing a dear friend. Notice the strength, the courage, and the pure intention that existed within you then, even if your choices seem imperfect now. Write down 3 qualities you can now recognize in your past self that you couldn't see before. Let this exercise become a bridge of understanding between who you were and who you have become, acknowledging that each step of your journey, even those you once judged harshly, has contributed to your growth and wisdom. Chapter 29, The Infinite Loop. In the sacred space between desire and manifestation lies a truth often overlooked. What you observe with certainty already exists in essence. Diane understood this when she approached her vision board differently one autumn morning. Instead of cutting out images of what she wanted, she selected pictures that resonated with what she sensed was already flowing through her life. As she placed each image, she didn't think, "I want this," but rather, "I see this unfolding." A photograph of a garden became not a wish for peace, but recognition of the tranquility already growing within her. An image of a thriving business reflected not a desperate hope, but an acknowledgement of her expanding creative force. Through this shift in observation, Diane discovered that manifestation isn't about reaching for what's absent. It's about aligning with what's emerging. The vision board transformed from a collection of desires into a mirror reflecting the seeds of reality already planted in the soil of her consciousness. The universe responds not to what you want, but to what you observe as truth. When you see with the eyes of certainty rather than longing, reality begins to align with your vision. Thomas discovered this principle through a different practice. Each evening, he would write in his journal as if he had already embodied his highest values. Instead of writing, "I want to be more patient," he wrote about moments of patience he had experienced that day, however small. "Today I listened fully," he would write, or in that moment of frustration, "I chose understanding." He wasn't pretending or affirming. He was training his observer's eye to recognize these qualities already present within him. As weeks passed, Thomas noticed something subtle yet profound. His behavior began to align naturally with his writings. It wasn't through force or discipline, but through the power of observation itself. By witnessing himself as already embodying these qualities, he allowed them to emerge more fully. This is the alchemy of observation. When you look for what is already present, even in seed form, you give it permission to grow. Your gaze becomes the sunlight that nurtures potential into reality. Practice each evening. Settle into a quiet space with your journal and write about your day as though you are already living as your highest self. Notice the smallest moments where qualities you seek were already present. Write about them not as aspirations, but as witnessed truths. Pay careful attention to how this practice of conscious observation begins to shape your awareness and, through it, your reality. The simple act of recording these moments, these seeds of what you wish to cultivate, will illuminate the path of your transformation. As you continue this practice, you'll discover that what you seek has always resided within you, waiting only for your recognition to flourish. Chapter 30. The Stillness That Creates. In the gentle embrace of autumn, Grace found her place beneath the ancient elm tree. Each morning, she would settle onto her weathered wooden bench, her silver hair catching the early light. She didn't come to think, to solve, or to seek. She came simply to observe. As the days passed, people began noticing the quiet woman beneath the elm. At first, they wondered if she needed help or companionship. But when they approached, they discovered something remarkable. In her presence, their thoughts settled like leaves on still water. Grace didn't offer advice or wisdom. She simply observed, fully, completely, without judgment. Her gaze held such pure awareness that those who met it felt truly seen. Perhaps for the first time, young mothers with crying children would sit nearby and find their anxiety melting away. Businessmen rushing to meetings would pause, drawn by an inexplicable peace that seemed to radiate from her corner of the park. She had discovered the ultimate truth, that pure observation, untainted by desire or fear, is the highest form of creation. In her stillness, she became a mirror for the universe to recognize itself. In another part of the city, William entered his meditation room one evening. Unlike his usual practice of seeking answers or chasing enlightenment, this time he simply sat. No goals, no expectations, just awareness flowing like water. In that space of pure observation, something shifted. The room seemed to fill with a presence both ancient and new. Without seeking it, a vision emerged, not of future events or mystical realms, but of reality as it truly was. He saw how his striving had created resistance, how his seeking had obscured what was already there. The vision wasn't dramatic or earth-shattering. It was simple, like Grace's presence under the elm, a recognition that the universe unfolds perfectly when simply observed. William's path changed not through effort or intention, but through the profound act of witnessing without attachment. These stories reveal the deepest mystery of observation, that in pure awareness, we become not just observers, but channels through which the universe observes itself. When we step aside from our need to direct or control, we allow something greater to flow through us. Practice. Find a quiet moment each day to simply observe your world without judgment or desire to change it. Let your awareness rest gently on whatever appears before you. The play of light on leaves, the rhythm of breath in your body, the subtle sounds that fill the air. Make no effort to analyze or interpret. Allow yourself to become like a still lake, reflecting all that is without rippling the surface with thought or reaction. In this state of pure witnessing, you become one with the ancient practice of those who discovered the deepest truths through simply being present. Let the universe reveal itself through your quiet attention, knowing that in your stillness you participate in the eternal dance of consciousness observing itself. If you enjoyed this audiobook, I created a free ebook version for you. You can download it using the link in the pinned comment. Conclusion. Through the journey of these teachings, a profound truth has emerged, one that transcends mere intellectual understanding. You have discovered that observation is not a passive act, but a creative force that shapes the very fabric of your reality. Each moment of awareness becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of existence. As you reflect on the stories shared of Grace beneath her elm tree, of William in his meditation, of countless others who discovered the power of pure witnessing, you begin to sense how this wisdom weaves through your own life. The observer effect is not simply a principle to be studied, it is the rhythm of consciousness itself, flowing through every breath, every thought, every moment of being. In your daily life, you may notice how your attention shapes experience. When you observe with judgment, reality contracts. When you observe with acceptance, it expands. This is not theory, but living truth, experienced in the laboratory of your own awareness. The teachings offered here are not meant to be stored away as knowledge, but to be embodied as presence. They invite you to step fully into your role as conscious creator, recognizing that every moment of observation is also a moment of choice. You choose not just what to see, but how to see it. As you close this book, understand that its true value lies not in the words themselves, but in how they awaken you to your own power of perception. The mirror it holds reflects not just what is, but what becomes possible through conscious observation. You stand now at the threshold between passive viewing and active co-creation. Each breath, each glance, each moment of attention carries the potential to shape reality. In the space between observer and observed, the dance of creation unfolds eternally. Return to these chapters not seeking answers, but remembering your own innate wisdom. For in the end, the greatest truth is this: you are not separate from what you observe. In the stillness of pure awareness, you and the universe move as one. If you enjoyed this exclusive audiobook, I handpicked this next book which will change your life.